Happy Friday, everybody.
Happy Friday.
Woohoo. It is Friday. We made it to the end of the week and we are switching things up again. So this is so exciting. Lately, our Fridays, we've had some special guests, new employees. And today we have Megan Hall, who is fulfilling a couple of different roles on our team. So welcome, Megan. Thanks for joining us.
You're welcome.
So Megan, one of her specialties is she is a podcaster. She's been podcasting with her amazing podcast called the Inspired Women Podcast for several years now. I don't even remember how many.
It will be 4 in January, so 3.5.
Yeah, and she's been incredibly consistent and successful with that podcast. So she is our new podcasting expert on this team. So if you have ever wanted to know anything about podcasts, whether it's getting featured on them, on others, or starting your own, she will be the team member helping you out with that journey. So Megan has 5 tips for us today to tell you how to get featured on podcasts. So take it away, Megan.
I do. My first tip is to listen. I know a lot of people will tell me, well, that's time consuming. I want to get featured on like 20 podcasts this year. But the problem with not listening is 1, you may not understand the premise of the podcast. And 2, what if you don't like the podcaster themselves? I don't know. Like sometimes I listen to podcasts and I'm like, no, not that one. Because I just don't like the person who's hosting the podcast.
Right. Part of that is that you need to have chemistry with who you're being interviewed with for it to be a really engaging podcast for people to not drop off and stop listening to, right?
Well, it's like anything in life. Right. I think in any circumstance, personality really makes that chemistry such a strong thing. So why would listening to someone be any different than, your favorite YouTuber or your favorite actress or just people in general?
Agreed. And I think that a lot of times when people apply to my podcast, it's very obvious when they haven't listened because I'm like, no, it's not even close to what we do on this podcast.
Right. Yeah.
So that leads into my second tip is to look on their website and see how you should pitch them. Some people like me have an application. Others may want you to email them, but they have certain questions they want you to answer. If you don't see anything, see if you can find their email and email them. If you don't see an email, social media should really be your last resort because we got to remember social media is social and they may not want their inbox blown up with people trying to pitch for the podcast. So first resort, look on their website, see how you can apply. If they don't have it spelled out, do an email. And third resort is social media if there is no other option.
Nice. That makes sense, the order that you would go through for that. So I think it makes sense to just kind of follow whatever protocol is in place. And so I think that's a mistake that a lot of people probably make is just coming up with email addresses and just like mass emailing, pitching. You might get some good hits that way, but to me, it seems like a waste of time.
Yes, and I get those all the time.
I know you do.
I do, and I have an application on my page, and I feel like when people don't do that little bit of work to see how they should apply, it's probably going to be an automatic no, to be honest. If somebody already has something in place for how they want you to apply to their podcast or pitch them. I know I applied to one that I really enjoyed listening to, and they had specific questions they wanted you to answer when you emailed them back.
Yeah. Yeah, so just a little bit of research goes a long way, right?
It really does. So the next one is when you're applying, emailing, whatever, try to keep it short and to the point. Sometimes I will get emails, which I shouldn't receive because I have an application, but sometimes I'll get emails that are 5 to 7 paragraphs long. And I read through them and I still don't get what they're trying to say. So really keeping it short and to the point. If a podcaster needs more information, they will email you back and ask for it. For people who have an application, the questions they ask you, that's what they want answered. They don't need any more information than that. If they did, they would ask for more questions. But yeah, paragraphs upon paragraphs of accolades. I've been featured in these 100 different places. And by the time I get to the end of the email, I'm just like, oh my gosh, that's a lot. You don't want to overwhelm the person reading your application or email.
They know what they're looking for. So they're going to, especially the more experienced ones, and probably the ones that you really want on, are going to have a process in place and set information that they want to retrieve from people. So,
I mean, I kind of think about it as like a job application. So you're giving the very standard information of a resume. And if you have, the places that you've been on or featured, or people that you feature on your own podcast, you're going to have a separate document that you can attach and be like, if you want more information, here's my list of things. It's kind of like what I did when I was applying places with like a portfolio. So I would do my regular resume, and then I'm like, if you would like to see my samples of my work, here's the attached, or here is the website where you can go look at my work.
That's a great idea for somebody that you're emailing. Like I said, some people have an application, and so they're asking specific questions that they really aren't going to ask you. They don't want any more information than what they're asking you. But for an email, that's a great idea, Kara, because then they're not overwhelmed with all the information.
Exactly. I haven't seen anyone do it for podcasts, but I know a lot of influencers do a thing called a pitch deck. And it basically is like a document. It's a PDF of like a couple of images, who they've worked with, what kind of like their guidelines are. And that would be something really interesting to see people who are doing podcasts to have like a podcast pitch deck.
Yeah, or build out a landing page on their own website with the media kit to download.
Exactly.
I have, before I put the application up, which I've had the application for over 2 years now, I actually received emails like that, which was appreciative that I could click on it if I wanted to, but I really never did.
It's an option instead of bombarding you with information that you didn't ask for in the first place.
Right. The podcaster should not have to search for the reason that you want to be on the podcast, which brings me to my next tip, or I skipped a tip, is focus on how what you share can help their audience, not what the podcast can do for you. This is about what can I provide for your audience? What kind of information, inspiration, whatever, what can I provide? I think a lot of people come into podcasting pitches with, how can this help me? How can this help me build my audience? How can this help me reach more people? Instead of, you're getting featured on somebody's podcast. That's theirs. You should be trying to serve their audience. How that can serve you should be like the afterthought.
Exactly.
I agree.
It's something we preach around here all the time with any bit of marketing, especially content marketing, is what value are you providing? How are you helping people solve their problems?
It's audience based.
It's not a direct sale. it's an indirect sale, and a way that you can benefit them. And then if you reap some benefits from that, cool.
Right. I think you have to think about it too from like the audience perspective. Most people don't actually realize that the guest stars that are on there have actually pitched to the person who runs the podcast. They think it's the opposite. I mean, which can be where, for instance, you would search someone, but I think that, the listener always assumes it's for them and their knowledge. And I think that's kind of just how it should run in general. It should be for the audience.
More organic conversation flows when it happens that way too.
Absolutely. And most podcasters will ask for your bio so that they can introduce you on their podcast. That's the great place to be like, I've done this is what I do, and here's where I've been featured. I tell my guests, like, please keep it short. I don't want to read like 5 paragraphs, but like, if you could give me 1 paragraph of like what you do, what your accolades are, like, this is your time to shine. That's your time to be like, this is the things, this is why I'm amazing. Like, don't put that in your pitch, like, I'm so amazing, you need to have me on your podcast, because podcasts are gonna be like, no.
Yeah. Avoid the rejection by focusing on the audience.
Yes. So my final tip is, if you get a no, that doesn't mean no forever. Listen to more episodes. Maybe you didn't really get what the podcast is about with the hopefully 2 to 3 episodes you listened to. Maybe your pitch wasn't quite clear. Maybe you need to work on that. That means like listen some more and try again on a later time. I have full respect for people who apply to my podcast multiple times, because I will respond back with, hey, this is why I couldn't accept your application. Listen to some more and reapply. And it doesn't happen often. 99% of people don't reapply, but the ones that do, I have a lot of respect for, because they actually put in some effort. And usually the next time they apply, it's spot on, like spot on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it shows that they care,
that they care, that they should be on it, they're meant to be, and that they truly have an invested idea that they want to share on your podcast.
Right. So those are my 5 tips as a podcaster, coming from some of my biggest pet peeves. And we have to be honest, every podcaster is different, but if you follow these basic premises, you're probably going to figure out what needs to be done. Listening is such a huge step, but then looking at their website, like most podcasts, at least podcasts that have been around for a little bit, have a website. Check it out, see what's on there, see what they have to say. You're probably going to find the information you need.
Even looking at their social media too.
So a big part of this for me is someone who, when we're looking for podcasts for our clients to go be on, is, does it even align with their brand overall?
Right.
Now, do you want associated with that other organization? Like, you need to be on the same, you need to have like that audience that you want to get in front of. It has to make sense for several different reasons. So do the homework, do the legwork up front. It's worth it in the end.
And I think like another thing that goes along with this is, yes, you're doing it for the audience, you're bringing something to the table. Don't waste that opportunity. Maximize on it, promote the crap out of it, not an annoying amount, but promote that you're being on there. And not only that, the one thing too that, you know, most podcasters, the person who runs it will ask, but make sure, you know, sometimes the conversation happens, they forget, make sure to tell people where they can find you at the end. Not a whole rambling list. Say your website and like your Facebook and your Instagram. If you have your own podcast and your own podcast.
That is a whole nother Fri YAY that I'm sure we'll do.
A whole other Fri YAY. There's so much that I can share for future podcasters but this really was like, hey, if you're pitching me, this should be the things that you do, or any podcaster, because we really appreciate I know other podcasters, so not just speaking for myself, but we really appreciate when people have actually done a little bit of work to figure out like, who are we? What are we about? Like, it's kind of awkward when people somehow convince me they've listened, but I know they haven't, and they get on for an interview and it's like deer in the headlights because they have no idea what I'm about. And the first time I say something that's I drop F-bombs in my podcast. And the first time I drop one, people are like, whoa. And I'm like, you did not listen, because you would know this if you did. So the listening is really important. Like you said, aligning with your brand. What if you don't like F-bombs? Like, what if that is not your thing? Why would you want to be on my podcast where I say that sort of thing? But also people go on podcasts that aren't really aligned with who they are as a human being. Mm-hmm. So you don't want to be caught later on where somebody's like, I can't believe you were on this podcast. Like, they do this, this, and this. So give it a listen, figure it out.
Do your homework. It's worth it. But we have so many other avenues to go down with you and your expertise in podcasting, whether it's from being on podcasts or starting your own. So I'm just so excited that you're offering this to our audience and to Create Captivate clients. So I already snagged you a consulting job for for a client of ours with podcasting earlier this morning. So we're going to start offering Megan's expertise. So if anyone has questions, please drop them in the comments. We'll be happy to go back and answer. Or you can always shoot us an email at info@createcaptivate.com. And in the meantime, just stay tuned. Next Friday, we'll be back live at noon. Haven't picked a topic yet, but it'll probably an introduction. I think it'll probably be an introduction to Michael, our new multimedia coordinator, whose specialty is in video and audio. So get excited for that. We'll see you next week. And thanks again, Megan, for your time this morning. I appreciate you coming in and sharing all the wisdom. You still there?
Still here.
Okay. Bye.
I was waiting for you to end it. Oh, I was supposed to say bye?
Yeah. All right. Everybody have a good weekend.
Happy Friday.
Oh, man. That was great.